So I'm speaking to Ryan Anderson of the Heritage Foundation here in Cape Town. Welcome to Cape Town,
Thank
Ryan.
you.
It's so great to have you
Glad
here.
to be here, yeah. Thank you.
You've written a couple of books on marriage and family issues. I went through Why Marriage Matters, and you make some real good arguments there. So maybe you want to start by just talking about why marriage matters.
Sure, yeah. What we argued in that book was, the reason that you have marriage is to unite a man and a woman as husband and wife to then be mother and father to any children that they create. That this is based on truths of human nature, an anthropological truth that men and women are distinct and complementary, a biological reality that it takes a man and a woman to create a child, and then a social reality that children deserve both a mother and a father. That there's no such thing as parenting, no such thing as parenting in the abstract. There's mothering and there's fathering, that men and women bring different gifts to the parenting enterprise, and that children do best when they're raised by both a mother and a father, and even better still, when they're raised by their mother and their father. Yeah. And so marriage is the relationship that unites that man and that woman first to each other and then to that child. And so it creates both this horizontal relationship of husband and wife and then a vertical relationship of mother and father and child. And then from there, you see that when this happens, you have all sorts of good outcomes. Where this doesn't happen, either because marriage fails to form in the first place or it falls apart prematurely through divorce, that's where you see higher rates of crime, lower rates of employment, higher rates of illiteracy, higher rates of social services, welfare spending, things like that, lower rates of employment, graduation. So when you look at kind of what's the outcome of this, kids born into and raised by their married mothers and fathers tend to get a host of blessings in life. Not just the relationship with their mom and dad, but also future outcomes in terms of education and employment, and then their own families. Children raised by their married mothers and father tend to have stronger families themselves later in life. So it's a generational pattern.
So this talks about a good, loving, stable environment, but what do you say to homosexual activists that say, same-sex couples can raise children in the same kind of environment as heterosexuals, because they're also creating a stable and loving environment. And as long as there's love and stability, it is okay for the child.
So what I quote in this new book, Truth Overruled, is several children who were raised by same-sex couples who were in favor of gay marriage. They wanted their two moms to have the legal right to get married, using the argument that you just presented. And it's only later in life, when they're now adult children, so adults, that they get married and they see their husbands fathering their children, that they see what they missed out on by not having a father. And so they say, look, we don't think that gay people can't parent well. We just say the two best moms in the world can't replace the missing father.
Absolutely.
The two best fathers in the world can't replace the missing mother. And so what I do in Truth Overruled is I say, look, don't take it from me. I quote at length several different children raised by same-sex couples saying, we love our two moms, but the two best moms, we still missed that dad. And they didn't even realize this until they saw their husband fathering their children. And they saw that a father does something unique and distinct that the mother doesn't.
Absolutely. So marriage matters, and it obviously matters to society as well. What we're seeing in society, even here in South Africa, is the social ills, drug addiction, alcoholism, teen pregnancies, all of those things. One can trace it back to the breakdown of a family. So marriage and its importance to society. But does it mean that any kind of marriage, when you say marriage, what do you mean by that, and how does it play a role in strengthening society? For example, single-parent families, a mother raising a child in a very stable home, maybe grandparents helping out. Is that the same as?
Right. So the social science that we have about 40 years of rigorous social science that was comparing the intact biological husband, wife, mother, father family to the alternatives. And so they looked at single parenting, they looked at cohabitation, they looked at divorce, and they looked at divorce and remarriage, which were the four, at the time, most common alternatives to being in an intact married biological family. And they found for all four of those alternative family structures, whether it's a single parent, divorce and then remarriage, divorce and no remarriage, or cohabitation, that they didn't produce as good outcomes. That the family structure that provided the best outcome was the married biological mother and father. That divorce, even divorce and remarriage, didn't provide the same outcomes. Cohabitation doesn't provide the same outcomes. Single parenting doesn't provide the same outcomes. Then within the past decade, now maybe the past 15 years, the question was, what about same-sex parenting? And you had all of these studies that came out that were touted by the media saying same-sex couples, there's no difference between married mothers and fathers. But those studies that got all the media headlines, they didn't use large or random or representative samples. So if you use a small, non-representative sample, you're not going to get a representative conclusion. And so only recently have social scientists been using large, random representative samples to study same-sex households and parenting. And they find that the conclusion comes to the exact same conclusion as the 40 years of social science. That the best place for a child to be raised is with their married mother and father, and that all of the alternatives that have now been studied using rigorous methodology show that they don't produce, on average, as good outcomes. The reason I say on average is because there will always be anecdotal stories that you can tell. We all know a child who was raised by a single mom who turned out well, a child who was raised by a divorced family that turned out well. Social science says, all right, well, not what is the exception to the rule. Social science says, what is the rule? We can all point to exceptions to rule. And public policy and the law, what we want the government to say is that we look to the rule when we're making law, not the exception to the law.
Exactly. I mean, that's the most intelligent thing to do. A comment you made in your talk earlier on, which got me thinking, was how did the United States Supreme Court, that 5 unelected judges, arrive at legalizing same-sex marriage right across the United States of America? It's got nothing to do with the homosexual movement or the agenda or the gay lifestyle. It had everything to do with heterosexuality. And that kind of shocked me because I never thought of it that way. And you're saying, well, heterosexual, their behaviors, sex outside of marriage, sex before marriage, the high rates of divorce, we've created and normalized this thing. So the next step, logical step then for those judges, well, marriage really doesn't matter between a man and a woman, so why not just legalize same-sex marriage?
Right. Yeah, I mean, so the argument here is that gays and lesbians aren't to blame for the breakdown of marriage in the United States. Straight people are. It was straight people who in the 60s bought into the liberal ideology of the sexual revolution. It's what gave us cohabitation and non-marital childbearing, the rise of premarital sex, the introduction of no-fault divorce laws, the more than doubling in the rates of divorce. Right now, 40% of all American kids are born to single parents. That all took place through the culture. Heterosexuals bought into a liberal ideology about the body, about sexuality, about marriage and the family. We didn't take exclusivity, permanence, and monogamy seriously.
That's right.
And then 5 unelected judges on our Supreme Court said, oh, we don't need to take sexual complementarity seriously either. So gay marriage, the redefinition of marriage, isn't the cause of the breakdown of marriage in the United States. It's a symptom of it. It's a consequence of it. Because marriage broke down for 40 to 50 years, it then got redefined by the judges. But now it'll be an accelerant. The judicial redefinition of marriage will accelerate the further breakdown of marriage.
But heterosexuals created the environment for that
for it to take place.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So, it's tragic when you think about it. But it also gives us hope because we can reverse this trend.
Of course, yeah. We have to bear witness to the truth. We have to make the arguments. We have to live out the truth in our own lives. And it's going to be this won't be one this year or next year. It won't be one with the next election. This will be something that'll take generations of living out the truth and speaking the truth.
So would you say then, if heterosexuals took marriage seriously and began to change some of the things you just mentioned that caused the downward spiral, that eventually, in maybe 10 years or 15 years, we'll begin to see a change in thinking in the minds of people, in young people, and begin to respect marriage as a union between a man and a woman, and then the judges would rule accordingly.
Both need to take place. I mean, so what you need to have people thinking about marriage in the right ways. You need to have people imagining, kind of think about like the imagination and what Hollywood does and what movies and TV shows. That needs to go in the right way. And then how we live our lives.
Yes.
All 3 of those things, the way we think and understand, the way that we kind of imagine and present it in arts and media, and then how we live, we need all of those to go right. And then if that happens, then I think a new generation can reinstate the truth in law and have judges respect
Absolutely. That makes absolute sense, Ryan, because we tend to, blame outside forces,
Right.
blaming the judges, blaming the homosexual movement. When it starts with us,
Yep.
we don't take our marriage serious enough. And then when things like this happen, I think to be introspective rather than blaming would help us a lot more. But I thank you for the work
Yep,
you do
thank you.
at the Heritage Foundation. The books you read are very helpful to us here in South Africa. Well, the books you write are very helpful to us here in South Africa. And getting this information out to South Africans, it's incredibly helpful.
Great,
Because we
great.
want Christians, pro-marriage, pro-family people to understand that it starts with us.
Yep.
And you just articulated that so well. Thank you. God
Thank
bless
you. Thank you.